Hi, welcome aboard. This is a little motor blog of a trip we did in late 2015 up from Adelaide up to Port Germain, through the Port Germain Gorge, around through Wilmington, down the Horrocks Pass to Port Augusta, and then on through the Pitchy Ritchie Pass to Corn and returning to Adelaide via Clare. Port Germain, interesting little town in its heyday, sort of in the 1880s to the early 1900s, predominantly just a sailing port for picking up general cargo, mainly grain bulk from the farming lands. Tremendously long jetty in Port Germain. Originally it was a bit over a mile long. It's over the years has deteriorated in spots, but still sits at about nearly a kilometre long. And the town itself, I think its best population was about 300, but it's a very small town now. Some days you're flat out getting a cup of coffee, but well worth a stop. And it was a starting point for our ride through the Horrocks Pass run. From Port Germain, the road runs slightly north towards the bottom end of the Flinders Ranges, and Port Germain Gorge was closed the last time we went through for roadworks, and given that it's a fairly narrow gorge, gets a tremendous amount of traffic, and also the road gets damaged. There's a photo a little bit further on of some floods in Port Germain Gorge in 2013-2014, where you can see just the huge amount of water that comes down through this narrow gorge. The council has done the road up in the last couple of years, and even though some of the corners are still a little bit on the rough side, it's well worth a ride through there. Just fantastic scenery. The road continues on up to towards Wilmington and so on. We did several stops along the way. One of our favourite spots is Melrose, just a fantastic little town. If you're into push bike riding and hiking, Melrose, plenty of accommodation, great caravan park, lots of B&Bs, hotels, just a good little spot to stop off for lunch. Here's this photo of the gorge during floods in 2014, and as you can see, a huge amount of water coming down a small area to look at it now. Port Germain Gorge Road comes out just a little bit south of Murraytown, another small sleepy little town. Primarily it was a rural farming town. As I said, we went along and stopped at Melrose, one of our favourite little towns in the southern end of the Flinders Ranges. Had some lunch, walked around, stretched our legs, and then we headed off towards Wilmington. All the roads up that way are presently in fairly good condition. Some spots cut out by grain trucks and so on. Here's a shot coming into Wilmington, probably one of the busier towns in this end of the Flinders Ranges. Nice little coffee shop in town. Also there's a motor museum and collection of rural farming equipment, and the road then leads on from Wilmington, peel off to the left, and we're heading towards Port Augusta. The second gorge ride is Horrocks Pass. It's I think originally named after an explorer from over Clare Valley Way, a guy called John Horrocks. That was about, I think, 1846. This guy did his survey run through there. The road's been done up, does take a fair bit of transport these days, but once again, just a really good little ride through the gorge. The road is in excellent condition. Some fantastic vantage points for looking at things as you make your way to Port Augusta. Port Augusta, great little town on the top end of the Gulf. We stayed overnight in Port Augusta, a great little spot, plenty to see, restaurants and fuel stops and so on. This map shows we went from Port Augusta to Corn and then our run back down through the Clare Valley to Adelaide. Pritchie Ritchie Pass or Gorge predominantly mainly follows the rail track which was put in the early 1800s, 1850 or so, from Port Augusta to Corn, mainly servicing farming communities. Part of it was also the staging point for the GAN going north in the early 1920s, and at roughly about the same time the east-west train from Sydney through to Western Australia got going. So Corn predominantly a rail town. As you can see by the slides and bridges, the railway is still in operation between Corn and Port Augusta. It's looked after by the Pritchie Ritchie Rail Historian Association, and they're all voluntary members over the years, and they keep the upkeep of the rail and the locomotives, continually building new rail stock and so on. Well worth a stop in town to look at the station if you get the chance. Jump on the old steam train that runs down towards Port Augusta. It won't run in the summertime, obviously for bushfire reasons, and they run a diesel loco. Corn is one of these towns also has survived now purely on the tourism industry. A lot of good hotels, B&Bs and so on to stop. We pulled up at the Kwangdong Cafe, which is a place we've stopped at before, and breakfasted there. Take some time, have a look around Corn. There's certainly plenty to see. As I said, the main aim of the town, you can see by the large hotels, the Transcontinental and so on. It was built merely to accommodate the rail traffic and transport. But during the 1940s, during the Second World War, a lot of troop trains pulled in, exchanged, and those went north to Darwin and so on. This is just a quick shot of a ride down the main street opposite the railway station in Corn. If you're into old buildings, and certainly a lot of history, it wasn't just rail transport here. Of course, all the road trains heading north in those days, a lot of them were stationed and depots and so on were in Corn. As you can see, a little bit of the town has sort of survived in its original state alongside the various hotels and B&Bs. There's an old mill which is a restaurant come B&B at the top of the street. We pulled around here on the left, that's a B&B place, nice, clean, tidy, good rates. As I said, plenty of places to stop for meals and so on. One of the reasons we stock at Kwangdong is one of the trips we did through here in the middle of winter. Not only was it open early, but they had a raging log fire going inside, and it was something that was probably more important on the day than breakfast. Really nice people, did a great breakfast, and from there we headed off and started our run back through towards Wilmington and through to the Clare Valley and home. The Clare Valley is probably something we'll do on a separate motor blog on another day, but this trip ended, as I said, we had a really good ride. We did about 870 odd Ks a round trip, and the weather was absolutely fantastic and the bike went like a dream.